We're going to start this race clinic, and the microphone's not working, so I'm going to pretend you're my husband and shout. Welcome to the second race clinic for the PRC Coastal Platform. Shall we start? I'm Megan Kensington, I'm your race director, and today we are going to have Predict Wind, Nick from Predict Wind, and Mike Sanderson from Doyle's. Oops, I can move over here. To present on the weather and the weather routing and the tactics for going up the coast, which I know is what you all want to hear. You don't want to hear from me, so I'm going to do all my stuff first so that you can't leave. So my topics are going to be around.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Chance you could use that.
I would if it would work.
It's working.
Okay, it's working now.
Just wait 5 seconds for it.
Hello? Ah, that's better. Now I don't have to shout quite so loudly. So, two things I wanted to talk to you about. First is safety, and the second, and communication, and the second thing is dolphins and the marine mammal exemption that we have to go with. So, with safety, we check off the boats at the start. And then at each of these sked times, which is flat rock, sail rock, cape red, and at the finished boat, we will be reconciling that start list with all the boats that call in. So it's really important that you do call in. Yes, we will be watching trackers, but it's really important that you call in to us, because otherwise we'll have to go looking for you. So please make sure you do your skeds, and please, if you do pull out of the race, let us know. There are several contact numbers. There's the VHF channels which you can do with Coast Guard, and there is also in your sailing instructions and in your race pack there will be a phone number that you can also call. But please make sure you communicate with us. Really, really important is to have your VHF on channel 16 up on deck and monitoring that. If anyone gets into difficulty, if they have a man overboard or anything like that, the closest rescue is the boats around you. So if you want to be seeing your friends up there in Russell, please make sure you listen to channel 16 in case anyone gets into difficulty. It's really, really important. We do have water taxis and they will be on channel 8, except for my study. Being responsible, please don't have alcohol and drugs consumed during the race, and please stay away from ships as much as possible. Now, what is new to the race this year is that we had to apply for a marine mammal exemption for the dolphin zone. And I do have my notes here, because this is really important. As you can see here, this area, I think it's to the east of Tāpeka Point around here, and this area here, which is Fitzrobertson Island, they are all exempt areas that you are not allowed to go. I don't really expect you to be going there anyway, but just please note that there are areas that you're not supposed to go. We do not have an exemption for those zones. We've been working really closely with DOC, and we've been granted the first ever marine mammal exemption, so this is all very new. The exemption expires at 3 p.m. on Saturday. So when you are going back to Auckland, you are not covered by the exemption, so please respect the rules for the marine mammals area of staying away from the dolphins and coming to a stop. This also applies if you are a boat returning before 3 p.m. on Saturday. So any boats returning back to Auckland, the exemption does not apply. We don't actually have an exemption for whales. So apparently that is covered by an Act in 1992. So I don't think anyone really wants to come across a whale anyway, so just stay away from them if you do, but just letting you know. If we are advised of any dolphins in the Bay area, we will be letting you know when you do your sked at Cape Red. And if you do come across any, please advise the finished boat on VHF channel 63 or else on the mobile phone number that is provided in your race. So that is our dolphin thing that we have to explain to you all. Now on to the stuff you really want to hear, which is Mike and Nick's show on weather and on the tactics going up the coast. Thank you all.
Nice, Megan. Thank you. Rightio, nice to see everyone again. We did this a few years ago, and what we thought was, rather than Nick speaking and then me speaking about pretty much the same stuff, we'd make it a little bit more efficient and really try and pitch the weather into not so, tactics. You guys all know what you want to do from a tactical standpoint, but obviously I'm a firm and a big believer in predict winds weather routing and what it can do for any of us at whatever speed your boat is and whatever, however you even approach the coastal, how serious you are. With the definition of the models now, even with some good guesses of your boat's performance, there's really an opportunity to really, get the most out of the race. So let's start off with Nick, and he can give us a bit of an update on where Predict Wind's at, both the forecast for the race and then some of their new widgets. And then what we'll do is actually walk through the race, like those of you that were here a few years ago when we did this, and talk about some of the more key features as we work our way up the coast and what you just need to start thinking about. All yours, sir.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to stand away from the camera and just talk about the weather a little bit. I'm not really going to talk too much about the forecast.
You could have given me a pointer.
Because we'll actually go through that with Mike as we go through the sort of the tactics and strategy and things to think about. But a couple of, we usually, this is sort of always pitched as someone in this room is going to win the race. Because you get all the, so definitely start thinking about it early. In general, the forecast is looking pretty classic as such, with, a southwesterly 15 to 20 knots. Our only thing we need to, at this stage, it's still 5 days out, but is that there is a southeasterly change coming through late on Friday night, so get there quick. Things to look for is, in the models, on the day, model update times are really critical. So when you're during the race and in the morning, knowing when the models have updated, so your best information is always the most recent information, when it comes to weather models. Knowing when those models update when you're up the coast, so for instance the PWG updates pretty early relative to say the ECMWF. That's very good to know that, and also in the morning if you get up real early and you do all your planning, the model's possibly updated in a couple of hours, so one to take note of there. The other thing to think about is resolution. So what that means is the granularity of the models. So on the day and the day before, the PWG and the PWE will actually give you 1 kilometre resolution modelling most of the way up the coast, and that can be really, really critical for when you are, looking at sort of your the land effects acceleration or the being shadowed by the wind. We'll talk about that a bit as we go through the routing, but the high resolution modelling is really awesome for seeing that stuff and giving you a really accurate picture of what's happening, especially on the day. That's kind of the strength of those two, the PWG and the PWE models, is that short-term high resolution stuff. Longer term, like that's why I've got the ECMWF on there today. Longer term, it's out to 5 days is hard to beat. We obviously, if I look at this, you see all the locations I have, and that's all. Whenever you set a location in there, it's just for that spot that you put the dot. If you want to look at bigger, broader stuff, you need to look at wind maps, gust maps, wave maps, rain maps, that sort of thing. You need the map stuff, you'll get that big picture stuff. We do have a tool called validation, where we actually record from an observation point. We basically are always, it's automatically updated. It's always assessing how well a model is doing. So this is for Wakatiri, where Mike and I probably kick around a bit with our kids some of the time, and but that's actually comparing to Rangitoto Lighthouse, the observation that we have there, and it's actually comparing the model data and seeing how accurate they are. So, and we're looking at the 1 day, which is what we're sailing for 1 day. So we want to know what, how accurate is that model on 1 day term. A big thing for this race is observations. Thankfully, when we had the cup here, we were able to sort of use that to get a whole lot more observations into our system, and we have a lot of observations around the Gulf. And for the race, and we'll probably talk about this a bit in the tactics and strategy, but knowing what the actual wind speed is, even if it's at ringing light or Tiri, could be really critical to how you set up. We've even before you leave the marina, you can see what's happening at Oraki or Northern Leading. If you are looking at Bean Rock and you're wondering why it's always northerly, it's broken. That is not. It's actually going to be decommissioned. It's the Met Service and Coast Guard run that, and I believe that it's. I know it's being decommissioned. So, but we do have Northern Leading right next to there. We have an observation on there, and Ringy Light, and obviously Oraki. So round your start, all of those observations and your decision making can be helped by looking at what the actual breeze is, and especially around the corner and the direction. They're all in true. They're not in magnetic. We have haystack out here, and then didn't mean to do that. I'll zoom out a bit. As you go up the coast, all of the observations up the coast can be really, really helpful for you. Obviously, this is right now, there's obviously Tiri, yes, and then you'll see there at Kowal that there's actually 2 observations, and they're right next to each other. And what's going on there is there's actually 2 sensors that we put on. I should hold the mic real close. 2 sensors that we put on to Flat Rock on the lighthouse there, and one's on one side and one's on the other side because Maritime New Zealand wouldn't let us put it above the light. That's a reasonable argument. So there's one on either side. So if you tap on them, you'll see, and you'll see them. They show quite different numbers. And on Friday when we have the southwesterly, you'll want to look at the inshore one because it's amazing how much a small amount of interference will really change those observations. So it's about knowing which ones are the quality ones. And then as we go up the coast, I was actually talking to, if you don't know who John Bilger is, he's my boss. He started Predictwind about 13, 14 years ago. Anyway, he told me on the way here that he was going to put a whole lot of pressure on Barry, who does all our weather station installations, to get the Mangawai one going before the weekend. He's a pretty convincing chap. So that could be really awesome, knowing what that wind is doing, when you come to go across the Green Bay there. There's also one in here at One Tree, what's it called? One Tree Point, which, you're going to be able to see what's going on there. So, already you can use all this stuff to start thinking about, is the breeze swinging? Is it dying? What's the trends? They're the things you want to be looking at. And then another couple of special treats. We have an observation on Tapika Point now, and Bay of Islands Yacht Club. So they weren't there the last time this race was run. So if you're not here and you haven't looked at it, everyone else doesn't know. So So yeah, that, you know, coming into the bay, knowing what's happening in the bay could be, you know, the race winning move for you. What else did I want to talk about? Pretty much, I think we will roll into weather routing. I'll just refresh this because it's been sitting dead for a while. With the weather routing, if I can't recommend it enough, but I do work in Big Wind, so of course you're going to think I'm going to say that, but it's amazing. You know, knowing where you are, you know, what angles you're going to be sailing, what time you're going to be at all the different places. You can plan and make so many strategies about and make good decisions by having this information. But to do that properly, you need to at least have some idea of how fast your boat goes in any given conditions. And so you put in your polars. If you don't know what your polars are, you can go into this list and you can find a boat that's like your one. And even if you know that a far 40 is slightly faster than you or slightly slower, then you could use that, especially if you know that it sails sort of similar angles and whatnot, you know, similar configuration. But then if you you might choose something else if your boat only uses asymmetrical sails, for instance. So you're getting those polars right is pretty critical. But yeah, so long as you if you get something pretty close, you'll be a whole lot ahead of someone else that's not doing it. So yeah, setting those up, and a cool thing which also wasn't in here when we last did this race was we actually have a depth avoidance. So it's not just avoiding the land anymore, it's actually got a depth contour in there. So it's not routing you into shallow areas. It's not a navigation tool, but it's just giving you a more accurate route. So
just 2 seconds here. So one thing which is going to be really pivotal on this race, especially for the slower boats, if we end up with some time on starboard jibe, is at what stage, and we'll talk about this later, at what stage are you going to either put a big sail on to go deep to get you further offshore, or at what angle are you going to take, what righty would you flop onto starboard jibe to get offshore, because at what stage is it cheap? And one thing you need to remember with this router is if you've got if you've got it on your phone, or you've got it on your, you want to sync it to your tablet or whatever, because the weather is publicly available, we're allowed to use it while you're racing. And if you have this all set up and you just pull your phone in your pocket and hit refresh, it will calculate from where you are and the optimum route from where you are to the finish. So even if you're at Cape Brett at 10 o'clock at night, then you just hit refresh. It will then route you with the updated weather, with the updated thing from there into the finish. And so, if I was doing the race, I would, as a tactician, I'd probably refresh my route 40 times during the race. Just because every time I'm at another significant point and I get an opportunity to that's then, it knows where I am, right? And so it's just that next level of accuracy for the next stage and the next stage. And a classic one where I was going to before is, you run a route and you're cruising along on port, you think it's all great, you run the route and the router's got you on starboard jibe. And then, because that's a classic, and then you go, whoa, okay, that doesn't mean you carve the boat into a jibe without telling anyone. What it means is you go, why has it got me on starboard? And that's what we'll talk about a lot later. Here I am cruising with my new Code Zero, which my sailmaker sold me, and it thinks I'm on starboard with a symmetrical shoot-up or an A2 or something, So that's, I think, the biggest tool the router's got for us is sparking this. I go, why does it want to do this? What does it know that I don't? Quite a lot is the truth.
Yeah,
it knows where I should be going.
It is very clever.
Yeah.
But
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, it's nearly your turn.
Yeah.
But Mike hit on something there. This is not you don't blindly follow the weather routing. You understand why it wants you to go somewhere, and you understand it, and you think about it, and you've got to make that happen in the real world as well. So yeah, but just before I do hand over to Mike, you'll see that I have put in, oops, I've got very zoomy fingers. I have put in a couple of boundaries here just to make it, know that I don't want to go inside Kowau, and if maybe even if you're coming home, when you could put the boundaries in to avoid these dolphin zones and whatnot. So yeah, and I think we'll probably go into this very shortly, but this is what it looks like when you've run your weather out and you're like, okay, how fast does my boat actually do these sorts of figures? In 13 knots, with a true wind angle of 148, do I do 8.1 knots? And so that's what you've got to look at. And is this telling me, the truth? And if not, I need to adjust something. If you do want to know about that stuff, I have a bunch of amazing colleagues who are mostly on New Zealand time. Reach out to our support team and they will help you with any of your weather outing questions. They're very clever people who have done similar sort of races to Mike in the past. So I'll give this to you, eh?
Nice. I speak a bit loudly anyway, so my family tell me, so maybe I don't need it. But okay, so I'm quite food orientated. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the race into meals. So I spoke about legs last time, and for those of you here, so I thought I better not do that again. So we'll start off by talking about morning tea. So we're down. We've got ourselves. Can we just zoom in a bit? Just give us this bit here. Start zone area, Rangi Shore. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so here we are at start time. So I think, so the start's a lot more important than a lot of people, we all get in there and we all hustle about in bits and pieces. The start line's very long in the Coastal Classic and trying to work out how to be on the line. I mean, people do a great job having watched a few coastal starts as well as sailed and many, but people do push the line. Obviously, the two schools of thought are down on the Devonport shore, and then, there you've basically got to accept that you're going to start with the air clear behind, or do you leg it out here at high speed, and then you've got, the tricky part of how you get across on port. So I'm not going to go into too much detail there. You guys all do lots of racing, you know your boats well. So one thing which I am a huge believer on is the times I go out and watch the start, everyone's 95% of the boats are cruising around in here. You're out there early, you've done your thing, you've checked in with the race committee. Feel free to come out round the corner and have a little look. And I think on average, how many boats have we got this year? 170. I think the last years that I've watched, maybe if 10 boats have come and had a look around the corner, I'd be surprised. So you're all there plenty early enough, just come and have a look at what's going on here. Obviously, we all know you get these heading puffs off Cheltenham, especially in a southwesterly here. We all know it tends to get a bit soft in here and you get lifted and things. But, I think this bit of the race course is, it's such a small percentage of the 120 miles, but it does set you up quite well for the race. You end up, for a start off, you'll obviously choose here what sail most people are going to use for a good portion of it while we're downwind. So do take the time to come and have a look. I think the other thing which it's classic to see often is what we've got to remember, is even though it is a slight left-hand turn as we're heading up the coast, the fact of the matter, as I spoke about before, you're looking for opportunities to cheaply get offshore. And when I say cheaply, I'm talking about the consideration that the the alternative is jibing onto port, or jibing onto starboard, and basically being 90 degrees or 80 degrees off course to get offshore. So again, the amount of people that you see up here, which is 100% in no man's land, is surprising. You want to be putting on the biggest sail that you can comfortably scrape the Rangi shore. You know, obviously you've got to go fast this way because that's the course. But you know, again, if your sailmaker sold you the new Code Zero and you're pretty keen to see it, and you end up here on the East Coast bays, you've had a Monty. Because you know you've ended up here in what is, you know, a breeze which is going to lift. We all know it's going to lift eventually. So the race is to get cheaply offshore. And as I say, we can talk about that. The boats that have come through here, and then as we go north into the Tiri Passage, again, you know, if you're changing sails up here to have to soak down to get through the Tiri Passage, then again, you know, you've wasted an opportunity here. The way we think about it, and you know, when you're offshore, say you're doing a 5,000 mile leg, is you would never, ideally, you'd never be higher than course. So basically, you know, if let's say you have, I'm going to talk for the asymmetrics. Let's say you have an A2, which is your running sail, and an A3, which is your reaching sail, and a masthead 0, for example. Then you would put the A2 on and be 15 degrees below course. As the breeze lifts and lightens, when you get to course, you would peel again, and then when you get to course again, you would peel again. So you'd have the 0 on as it lifts, A3 on as it lifts, masthead 0 on, and then, you know, so you want to always be over, you know, a little bit lower than course when you can, especially with a lifting breeze and you're going fast. So this leg here, you know, if you could be right down in here, not going slow, but not going high is the biggest game. I know I called them out a couple of years ago, but V5 tends to always do a really nice job at working this coastline, and is often, you know, really showing up some the 52 fleet down here, putting big gear on, sailing low. I think the other thing too is if we just zoom, can we just zoom back out to the whole course? Here the router's charging us straight through the middle.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
We'll just rerun it.
Yeah,
You said 40 times, right?
Yeah, exactly. 39 times. Yeah, you can see if we just zoom into sort of the...
Oh, that's very clear.
Yeah. What I was going to talk about before is, you know, I mean, I've always obsessed about going through the Tiri Passage, but again, you know, look how cheap it is here to go outside, you know, in the grand scheme of things, versus, you know, I mean, again, your router will do this very well, but, you know, I'm predominantly a through Tiri Passage guy, pretty close to Cowell, and an inside the Hen and Chicks person. But my guess is that your router, the slower your boat is, the more it will have you running outside the Hen and Chicks, so that as the breeze goes left, softens and lifts, that you haven't, you get to sail more of an arc up round towards heading to the break. So back to where we were. We've had morning tea at the start line. We've come around the corner. We've had a good conversation with our crew about the getting some big gear on early, knowing we can comfortably lay Rangi light. We're happy that the first 20 degrees below course is really cheap. Lower than 20 it starts to get expensive just from a geometry standpoint. But the first 20 degrees low is cheap. When you I think another thing to really understand at each of these legs is where am I racing to? So if I was on that first leg, I would, and one of my crew members asked, what's the bearing to the mark? My bearing to the mark would be right down on this Tiri Martini shore here, because that's where ideally, you'd be down on that coast. Now there's a few things tactically. If you're in a boat-on-boat situation, obviously you want to protect the long jibe. So you don't want, if you wouldn't have a jibe down there and have your competitor end up down track and what we call, air clear in front. So there's a few little bits to it, but fundamentally, if you could aim to here, and then by now we're at lunch, and Kowow's a tricky one. Kowow's, and I've won and lost 1,000,000 times off the Kowow shore. For me, Kowow is the one place in the race where the fastest way is to maximum concentration and to wriggle through the puffs. So it's a joining dot to dot situation there. Really, if you really want the crew to switch on and get you through a tricky spot, in the race, which is a chance to win or lose a lot. I guess my point is, since we're doing this on meals, don't pull out the lunchbox here, because everyone wandering around the deck, as we spoke about last time, getting KFC grease all over things, not a good time. Kowow Island is tricky, it's puffy, it's shifty, the wind often changes. We've got a tidal situation coming through here. And so, this is one place where it's worth sort of, I guess if you like, full inshore intensity, if that makes sense. Okay, now we've got through Kowow and we're in good shape. We already will have in our head where, whether we're going inside or outside the hen and chicks. The router will have, we'll basically have a plan in our head, but an excellent time to rerun the router, right? Just hit refresh, and it'll give us an idea of how to tackle this part. The interesting thing is here is, off Bream Bay. I mean, how many times we've been cruising up Bream Bay and you get snotted with it coming out of the west in Bream, out of Bream Bay. Well, it doesn't seem to matter whether it's northwest or southwest or even out of the east. It seems to blow hard in the west out of Bream Bay. So a good time, to again, we talk about getting east cheaply is, to send it across here. But it's also a tricky one, because we want to get up the ladder. You'll hear people speak about getting up the ladder rungs. And if you don't know what that means, basically there are ladder rungs in the course. So you imagine, it's a good time in this westerly of Bream Bay and the westerly influence of the Bream Bay to leg it up a ladder rung. So even if you're going outside the hen and chicks, try and use this westerly to go fast up a ladder run. Does that make sense? So because it's even if you've got an A4 on and you're ripping out here, or an A2 on, or a downwind sail to go out here, don't be VMGing unless you're not going to get down to course. Be what we call leaning on it, going fast, because it's a cheap time to get up a ladder run. Again, now we're, depending on how fast we are, now we're into the afternoon, evening, bit of sundown or whatever. And if you've gone inside the hen and chicks, then you want to be right down on the windward shore. if you've got up here with your new code 0 on, you're in a bit of strife. Yeah, you know, you can see even the router, you know, the range that the router's got us out is well out. This will be, for sure, this will be a slower boat that needs to take advantage of the cheap easting that we spoke about. And, you know, now, for me, this is often a really make or break part of the race. I find, you know, doesn't matter in what speed boat you've gone up in, people tend to sort of switch off a bit here. This is, you know, either late in the afternoon, early in the evening and things. Really good time to have a reset. Make sure you've had a good tidy up of the boat. Make sure you know where all your halyards are. Make sure everything's, you know, the crew is switched on. Make sure you've had a nice rotation. If you put people down, you know, to have a little snooze, etc., etc. But a really nice time to settle into a nice rhythm. Again, really good time to run the router. Again, especially, you know, have it written on your hand or something what time your weather update is going to be, so that you can refresh it. We can see whether this southeasterly change is coming sooner or later, and if it's coming sooner, obviously, again, that's going to affect how cheaply we want to get east, and all these sort of things. So a lot of this will be getting dark for most of us in this sort of, well, probably more than half of us. So a really good time to, well, maybe we're a bit early. You know, a really good time to settle in.
Let's see what boat we've got. Benito, first 47. So it's not a super fast boat, right?
No, but
That's the green line. That's the green line, is it?
No, so they're the different weather models.
yeah,
The different coloured lines.
yes. So you can see how much slower this weather model is because he's down here.
Yeah.
And you can see what I'm talking about here. See, this model has gone into the southeast early because look how cheaply this guy's on starboard here.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what
You're 100% right there.
that's what we're seeing. So hopefully here we've still got southwest and we've still got nice moderate breeze. And again, this bit will be a boat speed time. You know, while we settle down, we are where we are on the boats, really trying to, you know, make sure that you know people are still on the high side of the boat that you can convince to stay up there. Make sure, and you know, the trim is as good as it can be. Make sure the torches have come up early so that you can see, you know, all the things which just try and keep the boat as you're sailing the boat as well at 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, whatever time it is, that you were at, you know, 40 minutes after the start. And that'll definitely pay big dividends in your overall result. Coming into Brett, you got anything to add?
I'll get there.
Have you got anything to add to any of that?
No, but just that, you know, depending on how slow you are, like we do know, and we can probably have a look at it, you know, in the graphs, we do know that we've got our breeze is trending down. So, you know, like people will sometimes they'll say, oh, the forecast was wrong.
Yeah.
Or this, you know, and it's like, well, it could be an hour early or an hour late, and that in forecasting, we're happy with that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But trends are really important. So the trend is down, and the trend is going south, from the southwest to the south. So depending on how slow you are or fast you are,
yeah,
that has less or more effect. So
yeah, and even more reason to be able to refresh your route if you can. Most of us have all got the ability to sync an iPad to a phone or something, and you know, spend the time now and you know, do some homework. Your approach to Cape Brett, obviously really tricky in here. For something like this, then this is the one time when you've got to be really careful with the router, because it's got a forecasted wind, which it's certain is going to be there, and it might not be when you get there. So it will be here, 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 But here, in a southwesterly, is tricky. And so, you know, it's identify, so the router's just gone charging in there, no problem. It says it's blowing 15 knots from the southwest, I'm just going to take the shortest route. But we all know that there's 3,000 feet of cliffs here, right? And so how you approach this, again, a bit like that Cowell situation, you know, really understand, you know, that the crew is ready for this. You know, people that are new to this know that there's a chance if it's in the middle of the night that the boom's going to flop over the other side, it's going to back, it's going to do something weird for you. So that whole Cape Brett thing is tricky. You know, again, personally, I would start relatively wide, and then I would go hard for the corner with really good trimming. That's just an approach which has worked for me. So I would step out, step out, step out until a bit like hitting the apex of a corner in a car on a track. And once I thought I could make a go for it, I'd go hard at it. Because for me, from that point on, it's about a bit like a ladder rung again. What's the fastest? I'm racing now to clear air on the other side. You know, we know there's clear air here, and so yeah, I'd be wide, probably wider than all the routes are here, especially if I could do it again cheaply. And then I'd pick a nice angle where I can beeline it to the new breeze. Again, with a lot of intensity on trimming, because every metre is a metre closer to the new breeze, you know. And so that's, I think, you know, that's the way you really want to tackle that. Assuming it stays into the southwest, this, you know, across to Redhead's fairly straightforward. Yeah, not, again, a bit of a boat speed one. You do what you can to make sure your trim's all as good as it can be. Yeah, a really good, lots of sort of current influences here. I'm a big fan of having course over the ground up somewhere, you know, on your displays if you've got that, so that you know, if your navigator tells you it's 3, you know, whatever the number is to Redhead, gives you a bearing, and you can that you can basically sail the straightest line there as you can, is obviously going to be the fastest. And I'm not talking about surfing on waves and you know going down in the puffs and up in the lulls and bits and pieces. I'm talking about, you know, the big picture there. So, you know, anytime it's a nice gibberage like this, actually sailing relatively straight is often pretty fast. And then into the finish, great that, you know, the wind observation at Tarpeka will be massive. If anyone that, you know, doesn't take up that opportunity would be a big mistake. You know, it's a really tricky and quite a stressful approach because, you know, the Paihia Russell Bay, I don't know its official name, but the you know, once we're inside Tarpeka, seems to be its own little weather zone, and so anything which we can, where are we?
That's
yeah.
Tarpeka there.
There's Tarpeka here, right? Yeah.
So you can look. You can also look at the, you know, the trends. What's been going on? Is it
Yep.
going down? Is it going up?
Yeah, in speed and direction, obviously.
Yep.
And you know, that'll be a great indicator. I mean, often places like these bays too, you could, you know, still possible to have some drainage, some land effect, you know, all sorts of weird things going on in there. So 100% I would use that. A lot of current. Once we're back, next let us go back in there. A lot of current in Tarpeka and around these little points. If the tide is going out, you know, there's some quite big tide reliefs working this shore. Just obviously be careful, these reefs are fairly prominent, as we all know. But yeah, some pretty nice You know, I personally probably, you know, I wouldn't do this. You know, I'd be coming in here working the shore, hoping for a little lefty out of here, and you know, and certainly work. This might be on an incoming tide, and it said, no way, I'm going smoking out to the maximum current, and I'm going to get flushed in. So that'd be the two differences. Outgoing tide, you'd be working this hard, these headlands. You know, incoming tide, you'd definitely go out to the deepest bit of water looking for the maximum flow.
Yeah, 100%. You wouldn't be following the router in here. Like, so this is, you know, like it's, you know, grid is to course.
Yes.
To be able to, like, you know, sail up the shore, unless you ran a really short route. But you know, we'd be up to what, 39 times by then.
Yes. Yeah, we've only got one left. Our subscription's about to fail. So yeah, I mean, you know, no, from Tāpeka, I would be running a route, I mean not at Tāpeka, I'd be running it at Brett, and certainly the grid for the Bay of Islands is fine enough, the mesh is fine enough that I mean obviously if you're reaching in, get there as quickly as you can. But if it's got you at any stage not laying, then, I mean, you know, by that stage we're all tired and things. If you've entered the tide in there, then it's going to tell you, you know, it's going to tell you what, you know, what to expect. There's a pretty good chance. I mean, this boat are we still on the same boat, just different models?
Same boat, different models.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this guy, he's just gone out here. He's got a little bit of a right shift. So he's sailed fast for the righty, and then he's tagged and laid in. Whether he's gone VMG, he would have been short, and the guy that reached a bit, put his bow down and centred a bit. So he's got headed here, gone fast, and then tagged. So that's what he's got going on. So yeah, work your way up. I mean, you guys all know your boats well. We all spend a lot of time making them go fast up and down the river here. You know, we understand what they're doing well. I think, yeah, get the big gear on. Have rum line as the top edge of your course. Keep putting the big gear on to step down below course would be my advice. You know, something to lean on. Be careful letting your opposition get up a ladder rung. So if there's any time, say if you're leading the fleet and you're both on starboard and they jibe, you know, if you can jibe Simo with them, or you know, within the next few minute of them, and stay bow forward on the long jibe. Basically, you're racing to stay on port, but you're looking for opportunities to get offshore cheaply, if that makes sense. So you don't want to let some guy get up a ladder rung on you, and you get on. Oh, Mike told me I had to get east, and you're down here, and he gets a nice heading puff and rolls straight over the top of you. That's not what I'm saying at all. You're looking at ways to get up the ladder and cheaply get east. Anyone got any questions? Okay, that's it. No, very good. Listen, all the best of luck. I mean, the forecast's beautiful at this stage. Nick's promised that that's what we're going to get. So that's the beauty with Predict Wind. You know, you pay your subscription, you get what it says.
That's right.
And
You don't get what you asked for.
yeah. And no, I mean the forecast's beautiful. I mean, I think, and we're even going to get a northerly or something out of that direction to bring the boats back. So should be a lovely Labour weekend. Stay safe. Watch out for dolphins. And we'll see you all outside, round the corner, checking out the wind off Cheltenham Beach on Friday morning. Thanks, guys.
Actually, I have one thing. So just with your routing, when
With your subscription.
No, you know, like you can use this tool now and start. You know, I'd be looking at this every day. I'd be looking at where I'm going to be for my boat speed at what times. I'll be looking at the tides. When does it turn? You know, we're going to be going around Cape Breton. Is it going to be coming at us? Is it going to be pushing us through? You know, like start planning now. Look at the true wind angles that you're going to be sailing up the coast. think about your sail selection. Go buy a whole lot more off Mike.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah, start. The more you think about it, the more you do it now, the easier it'll be on the day. There also one more thing. If you want to use we have two different apps. We have a Predict Wind app and an Offshore app. If you're going to be going out of cell phone reception, which does happen, you need to have all your routes in the Offshore app until you come back into cell phone reception. Also, knowing where the other boats are, you can look at the tracker.
So, just that's not Wi-Fi. We will take this free.
Sorry?
Right? Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. Nothing's free, mate.
Thank you both Mike and Nick. I know that's what you all came to hear, so hopefully that's been really, really useful. We will also be doing another update from Predict Wind at the briefing on Thursday night, which is at 6:30. So we hope to see many of you here for that. But we got anything else, Fran? No. We really want to recognise our sponsors who have been with us on the Coastal Classic journey, especially helping us out throughout the whole time when we couldn't run the race at COVID. So in particular our title sponsor PIC. Now one comment I will have is that Mike mentioned that to be on the start line, right on the start line at the start, just remember it's also an outgoing tide, so don't be too close to that start line because we're starting under Z flag and you don't want a penalty at the start. So just as Nick said, check your tides and be aware of the fact of the outgoing tide at the start. We'll hopefully help you all get out anyway.
Any questions about entries?
Any questions about entries and anything like that? Anthony, it's your man here. You can pop over and see him. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.